Then to the big one of the weekend, I thought, although the Bledisloe, obviously, it was just considering how Bledisloe went when it was blowout, just in terms of the intensity of this game, even though it was a warm-up game. Wales-England, 13-6, very Six Nations feel to it. Stadium,
it was crazy.
Loud, full.
It was crazy.
Intensity levels just upped much from the week before.
There were guys going down hurt. There were breaks in play when both teams were going at each other. Like, they really do hate each other, and I was kind of watching it and laughing at it sillily, like, guys, this is great, it's very entertaining, but it also doesn't matter, and you're going belugas here. And it was very much just an arm wrestle for physicality, and we couldn't feel too smug about it because Ireland are very much a part of that trifecta. When we play either Wales or England, we're exactly the same.
This is it. Like, this is why, as warm-up games, they make very little sense in terms of just hit-outs, because they're never going to be that. They're going to be more intense than that. And this was an example of that ramping up. But as I was just going to finish that point saying, like, they're not maybe a stylistic matchup for the teams these teams are going to face in the World Cup. But what it seems the focus is to try and get that intensity level up sharpish from pre-season up to intense going into the World Cup.
And that is something that Wales very much achieved to do here. Wales were unrecognisable from the side that played last week.
Set piece much better, like as in scrum, line out, everything. Even kickoffs.
Absolutely. They were much sharper all around the pitch. They did themselves great service by just attacking the football and controlling the game. And we had a little bit of panic in the works about Gareth Anscombe's going down, but Dan Biggar, having faced another tirade of criticism last week, was phenomenal. And
he's no stranger to that, and he does have that grit that he just when you start throwing shade at him, especially in the press, he will almost guaranteed have a man of the match performance that weekend. He
controlled things nicely. His kicking game is great. His aerial game is great. He distributed quite nicely, ran things, was up for the fight from minute one, and worked the Welsh attack quite nicely. There were some quite nice variations to what Wales were doing in attack. They were quite well spread. They did flood the wide channels with men on a few occasions and got outside them. Their hands looked quite sharp. Alan Wynne-Jones was finding himself on the wing at times and was rampaging.
Looking downright Fijian with the ball in one hand and marauding. But
it was good little variation rather than just playing the smashy smash game against England.
That's what I thought they brought more than England. They were good value for that 13-6 win. It was tight contest, but they through Biggar really more so than Ford on the other side. They brought a bit more variation to their attacking game than what England brought, because both sides, it was one of those tight contests where both sides did have half chances and glimpses at snatching the win, but it was Wales who took the game to slightly different places and managed to accrue that.
And it was Wales who stopped what England were trying to bring, which was that power game. I thought the holding up of Billy Vunipola kind of symbolically was that performance and is what Wales do to teams. Alan Wynne-Jones was in that.
Yes, he was seminal in it, but it was just clever, wily kind of play where it's like, invite him in, even let him get a few yards because he's up on his thing, but we're just going to wrap him up and hold him. Because you're not really going to drive him back. That's not the way. You're not going to smash Billy Vunipola backwards. Like, very few, no one really that in the rugby world. What you might be able to do is
go to him in and
wrap him, and it's just thinking around what England are bringing, which was a bit too blunt, a bit too direct, and certainly with the absence of Farrell, you kind of saw the step down in terms of game management, in terms of they didn't switch it up quickly enough, and they fell into what Wales were kind of charming them into, like inviting them in, giving them a picture.
And they were gaining some yards in the contact. I mean, they were it's looking at it statistically, it's quite interesting. Obviously, Wales had more possession and territory. They controlled the game a bit more. Examples of where Biggar was coming from and how vital he was to what they were doing. But England made more tackles than Wales, but missed fewer by quite considerable amounts. Going forward, they made 15 clean breaks according to the stats to Wales's 4. And you would take this as an example of like England's attack being bull rushing, but all of that yielded no tries, yielded very little sustained pressure. Wales's defence, even with some missed tackles and some clean breaks given up against the power game, sucked England in and stopped them. And I would read those stats as more as an example of what each team really was trying to do. Wales with the ball were trying to go over the top of England, were trying to go around England. England were just trying to go through Wales, and their kicking game, which was so present in the Six Nations, was fairly absent for this one, and the kicks that did go up were inaccurate and were easy enough for halfpenny, save one error in the first half from them. It was very much not what we'd come to associate with the new England, but I think it's an example of why Farrell and Slade are so key to them mixing it up a bit.
Yeah.
And without those guys, they don't really have anywhere to turn when their power game gets stopped. And you can see that in this game.
Definitely. And Wales are so good for that as well, just like upsetting that by inviting them in to try and play that game, stopping it in very kind of clever, kind of wily ways, and then backing themselves to be the slightly more versatile team, dexterous team, where the context
they were much better in the contact area. I mean, like the back row, supplemented by Allen and Jones obviously being so crucial, they were just in and attacking that ball and slowing it up and making it so disruptive every time England had the ball, and it yielded a few steals as well. I thought Navidi off the bench went really well for most parts.
Looked very sharp.
Big gutted for James Davis. I had been calling for his inclusion, and he got included and went off with a HIA. Failed HIA after 20 minutes.
However, Ball had a great game.
Jake Ball had a big game, but James Davis, I'm not sure if he's going to get another go.
No.
So it's just one of those things where a guy
bleeding
just
scarlets,
getting unlucky.
Well, that is unlucky, to be fair. Like overall, Wales will be delighted really with how it went, because they did seem to avoid too many like massive injuries. That was a HIA obviously, so he will probably get another run out against Ireland in one of the tests. Certainly nothing on the level of Anscombe. Bigger went great, grabbed that jersey.
Yeah, I thought both wingers as well. In particular, probably George North, but Josh Adams as well.
Yeah, improved again on last week. Like Josh Adams was a bit of a non-entity in Twickenham. But he was definitely there and present.
George North, every time he got the ball, he was looking very, very sharp.
Yeah, he does. He does look sharp at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, likewise. I thought like the centres were decent. I'm still waiting. Like their hands were pretty slick. They were getting the ball wide.
Yeah, they were trying to go wide very quickly. Like Hadley Park's floating a fair few balls out wide, which is like good to see. It was also illustrating my point on like he's not really 10 cover, because those passes had a bit too much hang time on them, and were covering it.
I think we know that. Yeah. I thought Jay Davis, like, he was good. He was drawing, giving. We're still waiting to see him quite at his peak. He's by no means playing badly, but he's just not quite the offensive force that we know him to be, and that's just when he hits that form where he's so dangerous going forward. He runs very nice angles and can link up then, so he can break lines and then link up. We're just not quite seeing him at that level. But generally speaking, they'll be very pleased, and when he does hit that level, it'll just give them another element to work with. The scrum I thought was very interesting actually. I don't by any means think Wales have rectified anything. I thought in parts they were actually really struggling. I thought early in the game they were struggling, but at times, even when Kyle Sinclair came on, I thought all four Welsh props had scrums that went badly for them. But the general scrummaging of the game was coloured an awful lot by Dan Cole's sort of crazy technique. When it was like, I thought it was very curious, because last week he obviously did have a good game, but to see Dan Cole, who's such an old school lock the scrum down tight head, just being so loose in there and really trying to attack the scrum.
It's not normally the tight head.
Exactly. He was really trying to get under and over at times Nicky Smith and trying to drag him to the floor. And he got on the wrong side of the ref. He slipped his bind a few times. He was going from the outside to in for a tight head, which is very strange.
Very all over
it was crazy. He was going at it and trying to put him under pressure and get the England scrum going forward. But he just very quickly, after a couple of good scrums, found himself on the wrong side of the ref. And I don't know how much there is to be read into that from Wales's perspective, other than Dan Cole was scrummaging a bit mental for a guy like Dan Cole. It's something you might expect when like Tyke Furlong maybe. Dan Cole was just scrummaging like a mad bastard, and it didn't go all that well for him. But
True.
I did think when Marler and Sinclair came on, Wales' scrum looked like it was struggling a little bit. Definitely. Wales
definitely their front row, their first choice front row is solid enough to lock it down.
They still don't quite know who their first choice scrum. These guys are all getting rotated in and out and in and out. Like it was Nicky Smith and Thomas Francis, and then Wyn Jones and Dylan Lewis, who are definitely a step down today. But I feel like Rob Evans and Samson Lee are still their best scrummagers.
For locking it down.
And I think you're seeing a bit of that in the weakness of the props and how they had some good scrums and some bad scrums, but for the most part they were struggling.
They were struggling for parity.
Yes,
they were not dominating at all in any.
Even when they were getting penalties from Dan Cole's wildness.
That doesn't add up to domination at all at that time or that area. But just sticking with England just now that you talk about Dan Cole and his strength performance, I was just going to say Ludlam, obviously a solid player, but they were really lacking a 7.
Yeah, Ludlam is one
crucial to their chances to have that one of those Underhill or Curry on the pitch.
They've picked Ludlam now, and now they're now that they've put him in their 31-man squad, they're trying to figure out exactly where they want him to be.
Yeah,
my instinct says that he's getting a run out in a pointless game against whatever USA or Tonga, and that's it.
Maybe.
Like, he's not going to feature in any other 2 big games,
barring injury.
Is
he behind Billy V as 8? I think
it's got to be Wilson. Mark Wilson.
He's played there
6.
before.
Yeah, I think it'll be him. But Ludlam is in there as an option. They'll talk about that. Even Curry, they might mess around with.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I think very noticeable, and it colours things from a Welsh perspective as well. Wales were so good around that contact area. England didn't have a 7.
Yeah,
and there's certainly Eddie Jones. No matter how much he can pretend, like, gotta have a 7.
Yeah,
gotta have a 7. It's one of the big things that they fixed.
Yeah,
and while it was
just the way that they play the game, you'd think automatically you're thinking 7 is one of the things I definitely need. Like, they're trying to play a power based game. They're trying to be disruptive on defense and aggressive on defense. 7 is crucial to that.
Yeah.
They want to be roughing up opposition 10s and slowing up opposition ball and making it physical and messy. And to do that, an elite 7, of which they have 2. Which
also, their support play generally around the contact could have been better. They were a little loose.
And Wales did up their game as far as that spoiling game. We had mentioned the week before, like, that they are probably the best team in the world as a collective of just like pack and backline. They get their hands into breakdowns and make it slower. They add 2 and 3 seconds to rucks that really should be only a second or 2. They slow that up very effectively, and they did so again. But you're right in saying it's harder to judge because they did have a bit more free reign than they probably.
I also thought, like, it was first game of the season for Itoje, and as he does, he's got such an engine on him. He got more into it as it went on.
Yeah.
But certainly in that opening half when Wales were on top, like, he wasn't the Maro we know and love. He wasn't making the impact that you would love to see him make, and that's probably telling because he's obviously just getting up to speed, but at the same time is 0-2 against Alan Wynne-Jones this year, going into a potential quarterfinal that could be interesting. That's just a win for King Alan Wynne.
This is it. I'm sticking with England to kind of break down some of these things. What did you think of Farrell coming off the bench for the injured Francis and rekindling that forward Farrell access, however briefly?
Yeah, I thought it was very strange. I know it could be indicative of something and it couldn't. Like, it was just a warm-up game,
and it was an injury that prompted it.
Manu Tuilagi was on the bench, covering 12, but they didn't give him a run out. Maybe this was a consequence of Manu in the warm-up just saying to Eddie, I'm actually feeling a bit stiff. Something, and then they're like, we'll throw Farrell out, that's fine. You don't know, you're not privy to these things. But I would hope that they wouldn't be considering to going back to that. Like, even as an option, it doesn't really work that well, because Farrell at 12, like, you talk about the 2 distributors, Farrell is a 10's 10. It would be like moving Dan Bigger or Johnny Sexton outside of the 10 channel. These guys like to run the show, and when you're at 12, you're not running the show, you're not calling the plays. There are so many things that you're not doing, and George Ford in that capacity was a little bit lacking, and they need Farrell in there, and they need Farrell's lieutenant to be Slade as another kicking option with the left foot, and that gives England so much more dynamic. It gives them the opportunity to link up out wide, to fizz balls wide, but also to get their kicking game going. And none of that happened, and all of that really does depend on Farrell being
Ford
a 10.
Farrell changes the system so vastly, because then you're sitting deeper. You're playing more of a distributing game. You're soaking more through the 12 channel anyway, as far as on the other side of the ball. It just fundamentally changes the way the backline works compared to that Farrell Slade axis, which is excellent. And then
it leaves Farrell frustrated because he's not calling the plays. Like, some guys, some 10s, it's actually like Bowden Barrett. It's actually freeing to get them off the 10 jersey and more just playing rugby in the back channels. They're not running the show, they're just seeing what's in front of them and making plays. But Farrell isn't one of those guys. Farrell likes to be in control. And he needs to be wearing 10 and having a lieutenant as a second distributor, as opposed to being the lieutenant to George Ford's leadership. It's so much weaker.
It definitely was weaker. And I thought in the half-back department, England were a little weaker this week. But then, like it's
Willie Hines went off hurt as well, and Ben Jones came on.
That'll be a concern, because obviously Eddie Jones was throwing all his eggs in the Hines basket.
Picking his 31-man squad ahead of such physical games
is questionable, obviously, but they're still in England, or still back at base, so there's not too much for scope. Like, there's still scope to rotate people in and out. They're not out to Japan just yet. But that will obviously concern them. But the one thing that I think both teams will take from this is just that the physicality was upped, and they coped, but the fitness held up pretty much for the most part.
It was a great game. It was really enjoyable to watch. I was just grinning ear to ear, sitting down watching it, going, "Oh yeah, I remember these games are a lot of fun." I was entertained in my own way by the All Blacks earlier in the day, but that one was very much
is it like the intensity was obviously more in this just because both teams were there to play, and both teams were staring each other down and refusing to blink, as it always is.
As it got tight, the atmosphere rocketed up and the tension rocketed up, and everybody seemed to forget that this was a warm-up game, and they were to the point of stupidity. I mean, Dan Biggar was going down, and he still played for 70 minutes,
72 minutes or something.
Having gone down a couple of times with injury, but it was like a
especially considering like we're using this window to decide. Like Dan Biggar's going, and he's in the 10 jersey. Who is going with him is now in question because Gareth Anscombe, and this was a chance to maybe throw Evans into a cauldron, but
it was a chance to give Dan Biggar an opportunity to win back the 10 shirt. And I think the recurring theme of Welsh 10s not relinquishing the jersey goes on, because Patchell didn't relinquish it. He was brilliant on that tour of Argentina and decent in that Six Nations, then got injured. Then Gareth Anscombe came in. He didn't relinquish it all through November in the Grand Slam. He gets injured. Biggar comes in, puts in a man of the match performance. Doesn't look like he's going to relinquish it at all. But you're right in saying that now the next two games against Ireland, obviously they have a week off at the moment, but the next two games you would think are going to be opportunities to see who the backup is, because at the moment nobody really knows. Is it Patchell? Is it there's so much chat about Jared Evans, and I just we'll see. But Patchell for me is, if he can get any kind of form,
he's done it at test
he's got
level.
Experience. But I think they should start him against Ireland and see how it goes.
Yeah, you're maybe right, but yeah, a great game this was, and both teams reasonably unscathed.
Both teams will take something out of it. England won't be too wounded by it. They'll have some learnings in terms of what they do with the ball being a bit more useful. But generally speaking, I think both sides happy out, and it served as just great entertainment.
This is it, an unprecedented, intense, almost Six Nations-esque feel to the game, which was what we were expecting and fearing for these contests. But I do see the logic in it now. As I said at the top of this, I think what all these sides are trying to do is get their physicality and intensity up to a level that is genuinely competitive, so they can hit the ground running come the World Cup. And even if that means sacrificing a few bodies along the way, which it definitely almost assuredly will, they're thinking that they won't be caught cold.
On balance, it's necessary.
Like looking at South Africa, Japan 4 years ago, that's what they're all trying to avoid, being a bit slow to start. And
South Africa made the semi-final, came with a whisker of beating that best ever team to win a World Cup. I know. I mean, all of that in a bit of perspective, but obviously
we don't know until retrospect who's right in prep, but this is the way
there's so it's so curious. Obviously it's understandable from Wales's perspective just to get at that physical level, because they might feel that physical level is what is needed to put away Fiji and Georgia, who are dangerous games, and it feels like they're going to take them seriously. But alternatively, especially in that Fiji game and that Australia game, there is the potential of getting caught cold
because they're not defending,
because they're not used to seeing the pictures that those sides present in terms of attack. It's so wild, and it can be so fluid and smooth and quick, that it's just not like anything that the Six Nations sides bring. So there is that factor to things, and maybe a game against Argentina wouldn't have hurt them.
Maybe not.
But it remains to be seen. And they will have to get their scrum right before facing Georgia.
Definitely. But I suppose we'll move on then to previewing some of the games this weekend. But yeah, fair play to Wales. Got the win back, and it was a class contest. Great game. Thank you very much for watching that video. If you're new here, please like and subscribe down below, and leave a comment as well, because we enjoy the chat and conversation.